Hey there guys, I am back. To kick off this new season, I'm going to take a look at the very popular God's Not Dead. Is it really worth watching? Find out on this week's Indy Christian review. First off, a huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon for making this show possible. If you want to help me continue to find Christian movies that are worth watching, head on over to patreon.com/storyteller. So let's talk about God's Not Dead. This movie was a surprise hit in theaters and absolutely exploded online. At the time I'm recording this, the movie's Facebook page has over 3 million fans. It came out on video on August 5th of 2014, and I know the stores in my area have had a very hard time keeping it on the shelf. But the movie's also caused a bit of controversy. When the trailer came out online, it wasn't long before non-Christians found out about it and started weighing in.
Oh, I don't know what that thing is, but I know I'm gonna break it.
I admit, I was pretty skeptical myself when I saw the trailer. Not because I thought the subject of a Christian student debating his atheist philosophy professor was a bad one. I was just more concerned it was going to be a boring movie with a predictable ending. But I'm always an optimist. So even though I gave it a verdict of skip it on my review the preview, I knew I was going to have to look at it for the show eventually, so I was willing to let it surprise me. So now that I've watched it, was it really worth the hype? Well, let's find out. Oh, and spoiler warning, I am going to talk about the ending later on, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, I'll let you know when to mute the video. Josh Wheaton, a freshman studying to be a lawyer, has to take a philosophy class taught by Professor Radisson, played by Kevin Sorbo.
This isn't my world. Disappointed!
Yeah, that Kevin Sorbo. Professor Radisson starts off by making the class write "God is dead" on a paper so they can, quote, bypass senseless debate. But Josh refuses since he's a Christian, and Professor Radisson challenges him to defend the view that God is alive. Josh is uncertain he can do it, and it doesn't help that his girlfriend doesn't want him to jeopardize his chance at becoming a lawyer.
I love you, but I absolutely forbid you to go up against this professor in his own classroom.
Yeah, she's a bit of a control freak. But after a brief discussion with a local pastor, Josh decides that, this could be the only chance that these other kids in the class get to hear the gospel. So he decides to take on the challenge. Speaking of the pastor, he is played by none other than David A.R. White himself. And now I'm going to spend the rest of the movie wondering when the rapture is going to happen and Pastor Dave's going to go on a rampage. But I'm afraid we don't get to see Pastor Dave lay the hurt on any crazy biker gangs in this movie. Instead, he gets a subplot about trying to rent a car so he and his missionary friend can go to Disney World. No, I'm not kidding. That's seriously all his subplot is. It ties in at the end, but he's basically there just for the comic relief in this movie. Oh, but let's not forget the other subplot of a blogger who's got a bone to pick with every Christian celebrity she can find. She ambush interviews Willie and Corey Robertson from Duck Dynasty as they're going to church.
What are you doing here?
A very brief cameo.
Me too.
Basically, what you see in the trailer of them is the extent of their scene. Afterwards, though, the blogger finds out she has cancer, which absolutely devastates her. It's not helped by the fact that her boyfriend, played by Dean Cain, callously dumps her when he finds out she's sick. Speaking of people in his life that are sick, his mother has dementia. Not that he cares about that. I mean, take this conversation with his sister.
You really should go see Mom. She's not doing well.
She hasn't been doing well for years. That's why they call it dementia.
Still, you should go see her. Claire said you haven't been there in a while.
Like it matters? Besides, I just bought her a new TV.
He does realize we can hear him being a callous jerk about someone with dementia, right? Oh, and Dean Cain's sister just so happens to be in a relationship with Professor Radisson. Let's see, who else am I forgetting? Oh yeah, there's the girl in the Muslim family who's secretly a Christian, and a curious Chinese guy in Josh's class who's telling his father about the debate, but his father doesn't really want to hear about the whole God thing. Did you get all that? I'm already at my average runtime, and I just now finished the non-spoiler recap of the story. I haven't even given my thoughts on the movie yet. So here's my first thought. There are too many plot lines in this thing. I thought Courageous was bad, but at least all those subplots had to do with the central theme of fatherhood. This one's all over the place. We got Islam, we got relationships between believers and non-believers, we've got Providence and dealing with internet trolls. I'm sorry, but this has to be one of the most unfocused movies I have ever seen. I get they're trying to reach a wide audience and speak to different situations, but any one of those topics deserves its own movie, especially the Islam one. And most of them don't have anything to do with the debate between whether God is alive or not. And that's what the trailers and the title implies the movie is supposed to be about. It's like Pureflix took a shotgun approach with this one, seeing how many target demographics they could hit, rather than focus on telling a concise, cohesive story about compelling characters. Because that's the big problem with this movie. The main character, the hero of this movie, is a total blank slate with next to no arc or growth. I mean, after he gets over his initial uncertainty about debating Professor Radisson, his growth stops. The worst thing that happens to him is that he gets dumped by his control freak girlfriend, but she's such an unlikable character, it feels more like a victory for him anyway. Josh is there as a stand-in for the audience who wishes that they had the courage and clever comebacks that he has. And that's why he has no flaws. He's not a person that we're supposed to be getting invested in, he's a mouthpiece for some prepared anecdotes and comebacks. It's not a good sign for a movie when one of the minor subplots has a more interesting story with higher stakes than the main characters. The story of the Muslim girl should not have been in this film. That's a topic for an entirely different movie. The runtime dedicated to that would have been better used developing Josh as a person that the audience could actually care about. But the movie isn't all bad. The cinematography and acting were all very good, even the non-actor cameos worked well. And Pastor Dave's subplot, while seemingly out of place for most of the movie, did make me chuckle a lot, so. And yes, of course I agree with the ultimate message that we need to be prepared to defend our faith in God. And yes, I realize the other plot lines were probably added to keep it from just being a back and forth talky debate, which wouldn't have been good as a narrative film either. Speaking of the debate, before I move on to the ending, there is one more point I want to bring up. During one of Josh's lectures, he cites that things like the Big Bang is consistent with the creation account found in Genesis. For a young Earth creationist like myself, that's problematic. In fact, Answers in Genesis refused to endorse the film due to these elements of theistic evolution. But the biggest problem I have with this movie is how the ending is handled. So, spoiler alert, here we go. It's revealed during the course of the film that the reason Professor Radisson hates God so violently is because his mother died of cancer when he was a child. After that, of course, Josh manages to convince the class that God is not dead, which enrages Radisson further. This isn't helped by the fact that his Christian girlfriend dumps him after he's been emotionally abusive to her. The Chinese guy from Josh's class named Martin tells Josh that he's accepted Christ, so Josh takes Martin to a Newsboys concert where Radisson's ex-girlfriend and the Muslim girl also happen to be attending. Meanwhile, Professor Radisson just can't stand to let his girlfriend break up with him, so he heads to the concert to talk to her. On foot for some unexplained reason. Well, actually, the reason is... I believe I can fly. And oh so conveniently, Pastor Dave just so happens to be right there at the scene and helps Radisson, telling him that God's given him this one final chance to accept him. With his dying breath, Professor Radisson finally accepts Christ. And then we cut back to the concert, and the Newsboys perform the title song. But not before they play a specially recorded message from Willie Robertson.
We've heard in the news that there's been a bit of a squabble down there on campus.
How?
One of your professors insisted that God is dead.
And for the young man who took up the gauntlet to defend God's honor, and you know who you are.
But how do you know?
I want everyone to go to their contacts and click on everybody you know and text them. 3 simple words. God's not dead.
Okay, so ignoring the fact that there is no possible way that the Duck Dynasty guy and the Newsboys would know about the debate, much less know that he was going to be at the concert to hear this message to him, because the movie gave us no indication that the debate had any kind of publicity outside the classroom. Call me old-fashioned, but sending a mass text is about as effective a way of sharing the gospel as share this picture if you love Jesus on your Facebook is. In other words, not at all. This ending cements in my mind that this movie was designed as a pump you up, rah-rah, go Team Jesus marketing tool. It was not designed to tell a story. It was not designed to have any kind of deep theological insights. It was not designed to show us characters with real lives that we could get emotionally invested in. This is a Christian pop culture soundbite film. I'm of the opinion that if you're going to make a movie for the Christian audience, you need to edify the church. If you're going to make a message film, make sure it's a message that will challenge your audience to grow. There is no growth in this film. There is no edification. There is only validation. And the fact that this movie has done so well, to me, speaks less about the quality of the film itself, but more to the spiritual state of the Christian movie audience. And that concerns me. So, is God's Not Dead really worth watching? It is if you want to form your own opinion. For myself, I was very disappointed. But let's not keep this a one-way conversation. Let me know what you think. I would be happy to talk with people in the comments, either here on Indy Christian Review, YouTube, Blip, Facebook, wherever you happen to be watching this. Let me know what you think. Agree, disagree. I would love to dialogue with you. Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, I'm the storyteller. May God bless you, and may God bless independent Christian films. Because I think we need it.